Hey guys, welcome back to an episode with Program with Pags. I wanted to highlight today what I would do as a applicant for resumes. Basically, the idea of sending a resume is you want to encapsulate as much information about yourself without overdoing it. You want to expose, I think, the minimum but all quality points while still showing off in hopefully a way that makes sense. So on the left we have a resume that was something I had ran with in the past, and then on the right is kind of my most up to date resume, almost most up to date. I just took a new position as a founding engineer with my great friend's company, and very very excited for that. So that would be the one last thing I would need to update my resume with, but the resume for me is something that I'm constantly adding and tweaking and mutating, and outside of landing new positions. But when I'm out in the new job market, I'm constantly recalibrating and fine tweaking it according to job descriptions and according to my current skill set. Right, when I'm embellishing new skills in these times, I'm always adding or refining new details to my resume. So I wouldn't look at your resume as this like static, I'll build it once and come back in a year. I would look at it as no, you need to constantly update it with all of your skill sets whenever your skill sets change, right? Or really become embellished. So on the left, and I have two versions of the resume. On the left is kind of, when I landed my first positions as like a mid engineer, and then on the right is when I've now landed much more serious positions and opportunities. There was one for a company in Lexington for a founding engineer role. There was a senior engineering role at Yeti that popped out of this resume. There was a lead developer opportunity that popped out of this resume on the right. So I would say I found moderate success. I wouldn't say I like know it all or like have the winning formula necessarily, but I would curate your resume to something more on the right. On the left, it's something, as you can see, stuff is just like off script. It doesn't look proper. Obviously, I've removed some of my contact information just out of both of these resumes, but I wanted to compare the differences of, like, obviously the applicant on the right, we're going to be looking at something a lot more like punctual. There's core things that you can look at. There's nominal numbers that you could say: reduced code base by 30%, increasing maintainability, decreasing overall overhead, right? So things like that, where on the left, this was an earlier version of myself where it's just like I'm just kind of saying what I've done, but really what businesses need to see is some sort of nominal statistic that they're like, okay, boom, this person has done this and it affected this, saved this much money, or roughly this much money. That's a much better point if you could say, oh, I like revamped AWS's architecture and I saved the company $700 a week. Well, that can add up to a chunk of change, right? So things like that is so much more important that I would say nominally putting statistical points into your resume. Another thing on the right, you can see that there's a lot more, I would say, cleanliness, is really, really thought about. All these points that I'm talking about, I would say, like, responsible for regularly presenting to stakeholders. Like those are things that are nominally important to a business beyond the tech skill. So you definitely want scope of tech talent, but then you also need a little bit of business talent as well, a little bit of things like that. So on the right as well, you can see I've also posted a letter of recommendation with that. So if you're fortunate to have a letter of recommendation, those are obviously hugely important. And this is from my previous IT manager, who his name is CJ. Fantastic guy. And he wrote out a really, really, really thoughtful letter of recommendation. So things like that, where it's just a powerful kind of a cosign about you, that's certainly seemed to help a lot as well. And then demo project. In the left, you could see I had like 10 demos over here, right? Where it's just like, oh, here's something I'm working on, here's something I'm working on, here's something I work on. But on this resume on the right that's found more success than the one on the left is I just have one really solid demo project with authentication, webhooks, endpoint integrations, endpoints that I built, database integrations, ORMs, a lot of stuff around it that is just like, no, here's an amazing project. But on the left, you could see I really, although I was certainly trying, and certainly proud of that resume as well, you could see that there's just a lot of noise going on. Like a recruiter's not going to go through every single one of your links and every single one of your projects. Even though it feels like you're doing a lot, and it was a lot, and I still found success obviously with this resume that landed me a few opportunities, whether it was with two companies that ended up giving me pretty awesome offers because of this resume. So I'm not saying it can't be helpful, but I just know the resume on the right is a lot more. You've got a professional picture of me smiling. It's just more curated at a serious opportunity, I would say, more so than the one on the left. So with that being said, I would take a look at the resume. Let's just keep analyzing this a bit more and break it down with things like this where I've got my education, my experience, my history, just a little bit about me, letter of rec, a demo, and just some of my skills, right? And then obviously if I'm curated to a certain job description, my skill sets go beyond the skills that are listed here, but I'm not going to list out, 80 skill sets where on this resume I kind of did. I was just throwing everything I've ever done, where it's like, I've used this cloud, I've used this cloud, I've used this, I've used Adobe XD, WordPress. Here you can see WordPress isn't spelled right. It's just throwing stuff at it. And although I'd say this resume still is unique, it stands out. You could at least see it looks different. I think the one on the right is a lot more of a serious thing. So, and that's been obviously directed or correlated with my experience as well, along with curating your LinkedIn. I think that's important to certainly clean up your LinkedIn, where your profile is, should be roughly cleaned up and just professional, right? Like if it's a picture of me with like chains, a drink, or like, this isn't your Instagram. This isn't a social gathering place. This is for businesses and people to do business, right? Like, this is not, the place to come hang out and talk about how the movies have been this week. Like, no, this is a proper place to conduct yourself as a professional, and whether you're the entrepreneur type or the employee type, it doesn't matter. Either way, you need to be doing both. So again, here it's similar deal. It's professional. I don't have a background with like all this noise. It's just a black background. You could see my position, the latest position I've landed, founding engineer and user acquisition at this amazing company that is a fantastic umbrella of a few products that we are currently building. Very excited to announce them on this channel as well. But guys, I would curate your resume and LinkedIn to be, professional, streamlined, and quality, like proper. Like flip the reverse, because when you're looking at a software engineering salary, right? If you're paying anywhere from $100,000 to $200,000 base pay, so we'll call it 150K, just meet in the middle. You need to look at somebody and say, I'm gonna pay for them for $150,000. And I know that's like a really, really like just crass way to put it, but if you're a company and you're looking for an employee, you're gonna literally purchase their time for $150,000. Like, they better be worth that $150,000 check. So with that being said, I would take it serious. I would take it in a calibrated way that you're constantly referencing the job market too, where you're adjusting, right? And I think with that you could find a lot of success. So that's a little bit on how I've curated my resume and found success in the past and found opportunities in the future as well, or recently even. And what I've done too is gone on LinkedIn, and I know many people do this, is you look for software engineer or the position you want, front end software engineer, right? That's something I certainly enjoy, or a Next.js engineer. And I want to look for positions. What I used to do is just blast through all these positions. Boom, 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 boom. Let me apply to everything. But now what I do is I'll look for things that I really want to do. So React Native engineer. Well, that's something I'm working on currently and I'm good at. So maybe it's a position I want to do. So I'll look at it, see what they're about. Okay, let me at least read just a smidge about them. Like, don't just blast through all this stuff just to blast through it. And I know it could feel like that's the best way, but I'll show you guys even other strategies I've done. So there's a company called Cardio Diagnostics, right? And I've worked in capillary collection and for a dermatology company. So working for companies that are health and PHI and HIPAA related, it's right up my skill set and expertise or experience even, right? So, and they had a position that I applied for and went back and forth on. Didn't pan out, but it's something that's a lot more, realistic. They must have taken down the job posting, but finding a job that's kind of lined up with your skill set and experience is like, it's so much better because and there was another company too, I forget their name, forgive me, I think it was, but it was another healthcare company, and the point is when you find those companies and it's aligned with your current skill set or previous experience and things like that, it's a lot easier to just reach out to the hiring managers to say, hey, I'm such and such, I've worked here, I know all about FDA regulations and PHI and HIPAA compliant software. Please reach out. We'd love to chat. And it's a lot easier of an open than if I'm just shooting at the hip saying, okay, I'm applying for this, and then when you inevitably get the call, because you'll get calls doing that. But you'll get the call back and they'll say, well, what do you know about our company? And then you're kind of stuck in a position of scrambling, like, well, I read the job posting. It seems like a great company. When you're like, you didn't really care about you're just shooting from the hip. Which, mind you, that is another strategy. You can go ahead and do that too. But I would recommend curating at least just a smidge towards the positions you want, like senior front-end React developer. This is something right up my alley, and I applied 2 weeks ago. It's great pay, obviously, and then I can read about the company, see what they're about. Okay, well, this is home building. Well, I've worked construction, so it's relative to things that I've could be an asset towards. It's relative to my skill set and experience. So that's what I would recommend doing as well, because again, when you inevitably cross paths with certain hiring managers, the recruiting process becomes a lot more like, okay, we'll bump you to the next round. We'll put you to the technical test. Like, not a problem. So that's my advice. Guys, I hope it's helpful. And I will catch you on the next one. Cheers.